Well, hi there, it's me, Penny. Welcome back to my practice room for this tutorial devoted to the ever-popular Invention No. 13 in A minor by J.S. Bach. This is BWV 784, and it's early advanced level repertoire. So if you're thinking of learning this piece, it would probably help to have had at least a few years' worth of lessons. This piece is one of the shortest of the 15 two-part inventions. It's 25 bars in length, the shortest being number 14 in B-flat major, which is 20 bars. And also something interesting to note, 67% of these inventions begin with a rest. That's 10 out of 15, and that includes this invention number 13. It's absolutely delicious, idiomatic instrumental writing, and I can't wait to share my tips with you. So, let's get started. Okay, let's get into this invention number 13 in A minor. Isn't this so beautiful? This little melodic motive. I think in these notey pieces of Bach that are loaded with 16th notes, we have to be careful of notey playing, where it's just mechanical, but always looking for melodic moments and little gemstones along the way. And that, to me, is so delicious. So when I'm playing up to speed and everything, I'm listening for those little micro diamonds in the rough. And the way I practice those things is slowly with a lot of overlapping or finger pedal, this kind of thing. So I play one note, I keep it down as I play the next, and then I release the previous. And at a very slow tempo. And that helps to create finger pedal, which is a quality kind of pedal, better than the foot, so that when we add the rest of the notes, there's some melodic quality. Let me just play the first little section that I would recommend a new student to bite off, and that is measure 1 to the middle of measure 6. Sequence. So that opening section takes us from A minor to a nice 5-1 cadence in C major, where the opening theme that we heard in the beginning is now begun in the left hand, in C. Right? And those first 2 bars of the piece, really all it is right? It's just Bach vamping back and forth between tonic and dominant. So that is kind of fun. And of course that subject gets tossed around, and we have plenty of imitation between the hands. And one of the things about this piece, and I've heard a lot of students play it, children, youth, teens, and adults alike, one of the things that I notice that I'm not particularly a fan of is that oftentimes students play very top-heavy. It's very right-hand oriented, or else they're the very diligent student and they know that whenever they see the subject or the main theme, whatever you want to call it, they're going to put the spotlight on it and everything else is behind the curtain. This kind of thing. And to me, that's just, I suppose it's a useful practice step along the way to artistry, but it's a little too simplistic, I think. And so by cultivating some of these little melodic motives, for those those first two bars, and then looking for that same little pattern of the third followed by a step in measure 3. So this is coming out of and you could trace this little third followed by a second throughout the piece. I'm showing you the sheet music, and you can see that I've circled all the places where I find that, along with a lot of other things. The entries, whether they're a full statement of the subject or just a partial, something that reminds me of the subject, I've bracketed those for you. Now, one of the challenges of this piece, it really starts in the third bar. These little figures, which the left hand also has, and they're hard because we have to play notes that are a third apart, right? E to C, or C to A, G to E, whatever it is, at a quick tempo, oftentimes with the weak fingers, 4 and 5. This is measure 3. So it's hard to play all of those evenly, but it's particularly hard to play the first two with finger 5 and 4. And then in the left hand, let's say this is middle of 3, the last two notes of 3, where we have finger 5, 3 going to 4. Any of these 16th note patterns, there's another one in the next bar, right hand, measure 4. Not so much there actually, but the left hand in that bar, here, where finger 5 and 4 are involved with 16th notes, it can be really easy to skimp on those notes. And then you get wobbly sounding, poorly articulated playing, something like this. Where it's the fingers, first of all, I'm not sure the students always hear it. Perhaps they do some of the time, but I think even if they hear it, they just don't know how to fix it. And it really comes down to that little 5th finger and the 4th finger, which are just, bless their heart, but they're not as strong as the rest of the hand, and they never will be. So we have to give them a little extra tenderness and care at the practice session. As well, keep our ear alert for a clear sound. One of the things that you can do, if I take that measure 3, now I'm using 5-4, this is my right hand, to help get strength, you can hold a note, like the C here in my 4th finger, and then exercise, while keeping that note down, the upper note. And if that's fairly comfortable for you, then you can take more notes in the bottom of the hand, right? So all of that is just an A minor chord. So take all of that, hold the bottom 3 notes down, keep them down, and then forte staccatos in that top note, which is the weak finger. That's what we want to strengthen. Whoop. With a loose wrist. You can hear the overtone series being activated for those notes that I'm holding. You could try also holding 2 notes as you exercise the upper 2 simultaneously. So the passage is that, and I'm doing blocked chord, holding a couple of notes while I exercise the other in a forte staccato, and then mix it up. Maybe hold the middle notes and work the outer notes, or one at a time. Whoop. It's not the most pleasant thing to listen to, but it works. And then the left hand there, measure 3. Okay, so that part is probably okay, right? That's involving the thumb and the second finger. It's pretty strong. But the end of measure 3, here, 5, 1, 5, 3, 5, 3, 4 there. The last two notes of measure 3 into 4. You could take, hold the 5 and the 3 and exercise finger 4. That one's a little tricky. What might be a better idea, back up to the last 3 notes of measure 3, hold your thumb on the F, and then just exercise the next 3 notes. A, C, B, 5, 3, 4. Yeah, that's a better, that feels better. That's helping. And notice I'm keeping a pulse, right? Sometimes when I give a student an exercise like this, they'll do this. And take a random amount of space in between each repetition. But keep it constant. 2, 3, 4, 1. Keep doing it. Holding my thumb. You can do the next, the end of the next bar, end of measure 4, right hand. Hold the E. And when you find an exercise that works, one of these little variants of a theme kind of thing, then take note and use it. And when it doesn't feel like it's helping, then forget about it. But if it does feel like it is, then keep using it, right? So that's one way to practice this kind of material, which we have all over the place, right? If I scan forward a little bit, left hand, second half of measure 8. That's tricky there. You can also practice them like this. 2, 3, 2, 2, with a very clear pronounced accent on the arrival note. You don't want to perform the piece with accents. That's really like leaving the scaffolding up even though the building has been complete. Remove it. Remove the training wheels if you know how to ride without them, right? There's no point in keeping them on. But accenting the front of the beats can help. Going back to that other way, like we did in 5, at the end of 5 and at the end of 4. This is end of 8. Hold the E. And do forte staccatos with the bottom notes. And I'm targeting this exercise specifically where I have 16th notes in the 4th and 5th fingers of each hand. The 16th notes in general, I'm playing them legato. The 8th notes, not quite staccato, not quite legato, just semi-detached, and with some good weight. One of the things I can't stand about some performers who play Bach is how they make a staccatissimo, like ultra staccato on their 8th notes, and it just to me makes the music sound flimsy. If I were to do this, it's just somehow takes away from the structure and the satisfying gears of the well-made clock fitting together. That's just my personal taste. But these are all ways to practice. So let's carry on then with measure 6. So this next section then, let's say those first 5.5 bars, you spend 2 weeks working on just hands separate, at least 2 weeks. That would be excellent. Working up your tempo. And then in the 3rd week, you're starting to put it hands together as you then look at this next section, hands separate. So that would be middle of measure 6 to, let's say, middle of measure 13. Let me just play that spot, starting in C major, middle of 6. Here we go. In E minor, we had a nice little 5-1 cadence there at 13. And I love this section. I think this is my favorite of the piece, especially 9, 10, 11, and 12. When I play this up to speed, which I can't totally do because you can see the tripod is here, and I move a lot, and I got to be careful I don't knock stuff down. So I'm sort of limiting my movements a little bit. But when I'm free without a tripod to knock over, I feel like I'm almost flying when I play this piece, especially this measure 9. You can see I've put a little blue, I've highlighted in blue the C, the downbeat of measure 9, la, which I like to sing through that bar. And that goes down by step in the next bar to B, and then the next bar down a step again to 11, to G, to F sharp, to E, D sharp, E. So right hand, long term, you can see I wrote it on the page, ride the right hand long term wave. And I got a happy face. Let me sing what I'm listening for there. La, right? Of course I'm hearing everything else. It would be impossible to tune everything else out. But those notes are guiding my ear, just like these little ones, whenever we have that motive, are guiding my ear, so that my playing is not notey. So that's quite fun. But that spot, measure 9 and 10, there's different notes, and it's just the notes are a little further apart, if I'm not mistaken, so there has to be a bit more movement of the hand and arm. You can't see my upper arm, but you can tell by the bridge of my hand and my wrist that I have to do a lot of movement here in order to bring those notes out. So in order to bring those notes out, notice I'm singing, but I'm also doing this kind of practice. Sort of it's hardly steady, right? And it's already under tempo, and I'm taking lots of tempo liberty there in order to kind of pause before some of these notes that I want to hear. And by pausing, that's giving me a chance to go deep into the key and to use my upper body. Constance Keene, my teacher in New York, used to say, use your back muscles, and this is a spot where you do that. As interesting as the 16th notes are, try to give some pleasure to the 8th notes, especially when they're in their left hand. In fact, I was doing something a few days ago practicing this where I only played the 8th notes. And then a C of 16ths before. I love this. Whoops. I'm playing it way faster than I would play the piece, obviously, because I'm just doing the 8th, so I can afford to. But there's spirit in there. There's 8th notes. They give them like they're turnips or potatoes that you're pulling out of the ground, and they're nice, healthy, nutritious potatoes, and they got some dirt on them, just hearty. Dig into those 8th notes. Enjoy those. Let's look at the next section then. So this is after our arrival in E minor. middle of measure 13. So this next little section that you could bite off would be through to the end of 17. We have another sequence here. We've had a number of them already. You see them marked on the page. And then now here at 14. This sequence repeats 4 times, which is a lot. Usually it's 3 times. Sometimes it is 4. You know, this isn't the only time that happens. But it's a lot. And when something repeats, when a composer repeats something, the more often they repeat it, the more of a big deal it is. Try not to take it for granted. This is where students fall into the trap of playing everything the same. You may as well just, you know, close the lid and go have play basketball or something. Try to do something different. For my ears, because this left hand, that diminished 7th from B flat to C sharp in measure 14, and then in the next bar, is kind of a shock. I want to hear that. So the first statement of this sequence at 14, I think I'm going to give that a little bit more fullness of sound. And I want to hear this going to that note. Each of those little descending things at the end of these bars, which brings us back to measure 18. Have some fun with those. But that first one in 14, I'm giving that a full sound, and then maybe the next repetition of it in measure 15, maybe a little bit less. And perhaps a little bit less, I mean, we're talking a very grayscale here. It's all very subtle. Maybe a little bit less again, with more presence of left hand in 16. And then I think bring the spotlight back towards the end of that 4th repetition in 17 to mark the return to our opening at measure 18. There's no right or wrong, and it comes with experience and just trying things out. Try every option. Try doing each one louder than the previous one. Try loudest and then go softer with each of those repetitions. And then you'll find that maybe that's kind of like you don't want to telegraph what's coming next to the listener. So that's the other thing too. One of the things I can't stand, I guess it's that maybe, well, a lot of students do this kind of thing. Where like the music is swelling every bar or every couple of bars. There I was doing it every bar, like a little crescendo, decrescendo. I find if it's repeated, then it's predictable, and I want my playing to be anything but predictable. Anyhow, that's what I'm hearing there, and we're starting to get to the back end of this piece. Just a note about these 8th notes. In order to give them presence, you're going to need to come off the key, which means that unless your fingers are strong enough from having played for many years, and this is an early advanced level piece, so you probably should have at least 5, maybe 6 years worth of lessons under your belt, I would say, doing your scales and arpeggios and all that. But strong fingers, or else we're going to get just kind of a wimpy, haphazard, tire is half full with air kind of thing. And having clear downbeats. But something that can easily turn a student off and get them super frustrated, especially adult students, because they want immediate results. I saw somewhere in a comment for a video on YouTube, not one of mine, but elsewhere, where the person said they had spent already 5 hours on the first page. And it still was not coming the way they wanted it to, or something like that. 5 hours. you barely have cracked the spine of the book. Lots of time. But when you're trying to get that energy and strength of your fingers so that you can approach the key from above, you're going to find in the beginning that you hit a lot of wrong notes, right? In your effort to approach from above, the landing is going to be such that you land on the wrong note. And that's okay too. That's part of the process, because the more you do it, the more accuracy you get. I'm sure that gymnasts do the same thing, like in their landing or the dismount. A figure skater too, right? Or a football player catching the ball from a long pass. So don't be afraid to come off the key, and you keep your fingers curved in a piece like this because it's so notey. And when the hand is in the air, it's more or less like this, right, in a natural rounded hand shape. And then as it approaches the key, then it opens up into whatever position it needs to play. You know, and you'll find the right amount of distance to come off the key. It's not the same for everyone, my goodness. And there's some arm involved here as well. So that's just some general things. Then we're back at measure 18 for the final section. Now this subject returns as it was in measure 1, but notice we no longer have the syncopation in the left hand, which we had in the opening. Here at 18, we got 2 levels of imitation. On the one hand, we have in the right, and then in the left, but also simultaneously in the left we have followed by in the right, and that's a surprise. So hear that and enjoy that, and then suddenly measure 19. This has to be the most intense moment of the piece. Played a little bit more there, but measure 19, both hands have running 16th notes. That was not a thing. There was a moment here or there, you know, in the end of 11, 12 kind of thing, where both hands had 16ths, but never in the piece were both hands playing 16th notes together for so long. And that is probably the hardest spot of the piece. You want to do a lot of hand separate work if you're going to play this well, absolutely. So maybe take your left hand there in 19, try to also, because I'm blocking an A minor chord, and the point is look for chords, just even simple triads, maybe some 7th chords, diminished 7th chord like we got in 14 and 15, but even just little triads. And when you see one, maybe make a note on the page or block it, right? And then you can do some of what we did earlier, where you hold a couple of notes on the top and exercise the weaker fingers on the bottom with a nice crisp energized staccato, or then you could hold the 4th finger, play the upper 2 notes, and then break it up as written. Cooperate with some rotation too, because remember, rotation helps minimize the fact that our outer fingers, thumb and 5th finger, are shorter than the rest, and it's just impossible for them to get the same grasp of the key without some help from the arm. I'm in beat 2 of 19. There's a tricky bit. 5-1-4, A, C, F sharp. You could hold the A, finger 5, exercise your thumb, with really deep strokes into the bottom of the key. It's hard to just start in the middle. You could do some overlapping as well, like that finger pedal. And I've marked in brackets two little moments of the subject that are reminiscent, rhythmically speaking. So the smaller the unit you can break things up into, whether it's or even smaller. You hear me sniffing because I'm feeling the pulse. This piece, as we said, begins with an eighth rest. So you want to energize, even when the rest has been filled in with a note, as it has here. Last two notes of 19. And then right hand, measure 20. I'm holding the G sharp, exercising to the bottom of the key with the B and the D. Again, because I got my fifth finger there on the highest note of the bar. When the fifth finger has to play a high note, in particular a short note, as I say, it's so easy to skim the note because that finger just is not quite as strong. So isolate those spots. And then we get this delicious, at the end of 21. I just love that. I think, have some fun with that. It's kind of a shock. And then here, and go to there. The eighth notes in this piece, as I was saying earlier, with avoiding ultra staccato, give them full length as well, so that they sing. And there in 22, even though the left hand has kind of an upside down version of the subject, the right hand is quite enjoyable with that E major chord. So I like to bring that out. And you can add a mordant at the end. This measure 23 and 24, end of 22 as well. Practice that left hand a lot by itself. Very slowly. I'm doing legato. You can do that too for slow practice. And then some staccato. Forte staccato is an excellent way to practice getting strong fingers. And this does not constitute that. Very light in the key, wimpy kind of. Deep in the key to get strong. And notice the pattern of again, 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 and then woo, and then it turns around. When something repeats again and again and again, and then it changes direction and goes the other way, it's got to be a surprise. You got to feel it like you're on a roller coaster, and like it's the ride up, and you think you're going to keep going up, but no, then suddenly you dip. The music has surprises in it, and it's up to us to bring them to life, and we have to notice them first of all, because it's just otherwise ink on the page, and it'll die that way. So have some fun with that. And don't worry about a steady tempo when you're allowing your ear to listen. Stop wherever you find something interesting. And that's one of those spots for me. This at the end, measure 24, my right hand. That is nasty. Especially that A to the F. You could hold down the F and make deep strokes with the A and vice versa. play it as a chord. Holding down a couple of notes as you exercise the others. All of these are different ways to get some strength. But I think at the end of the day, if you break the piece into small chunks, as I showed, spend a few weeks hands separate and very slowly practicing before you put them together, you'll be in good shape. You know, I was reading, as we wrap this up, Walter Ong had a wonderful quote, and he said, I wrote it here actually, there are two things that human beings need in order to understand. They need proximity and you need distance. And if you can't get the distance, you're dead. So for as many numbers of hours of focused practice time that you put in, give yourself some time to step away from the instrument, because as Joseph Hoffman said, the practicing process, the learning, it happens when we walk away, like a film being a picture, an old photograph being developed. You have to take it to the dark room, and it wasn't instant long ago. It took a while for the photo to develop. So, you know, proximity with the music, studying it intently and closely and with passion and enthusiasm and curiosity and wonder, and then allowing yourself to take a step back. And that completes this tutorial for invention number 13. If you found it helpful, I'd sure appreciate if you could hit the like button and subscribe. It really does help my channel. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Happy practicing to you. Stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you again soon for more explorations of Bach's music. Take care. Bye-bye.